Okay, finally, when we have the authentication service to authenticate users, it is reusable. We also gonna use it to authenticate the users requested from the sign-in form. So again, let's go back to our flow definition file and look at the view state welcome, which is our sign-in form. So okay, we have identifier, which is welcome, the view welcome.xhtml, and we still do not have here binned model. So as we did it for sign up form, we'll do it for sign in a similar way. I will copy paste this to the welcome view state, and you see that we use the same model for sign in as well as for sign up, which is this one. Just only one difference: here we use that model to persist data to database, here we use that model to fill it and to pass to authentication service. So good, we have the model attached, and here we have one single transition which is invoked on new user event and sends user to the sign up form. This is fine, and we need the second transition that will listen to confirm sign in event. So transition on to. So this will be confirm sign in and to finish end state, which is this one. And inside that, here we use the same expression evaluation as we did it in the authentication action state, and I will explain why. Because you probably will ask, why not to make transition to the same action state instead of use this one? And the answer is, you can do it, and this will work, but you will lose the Ajax error messages, which in this case will be preserved. So basically I'm trying to say that if we use transition to the authentication, the whole page view will flash and the error messages will be lost. And that's why I find this approach to be very friendly to the application user. Because in this case, transition will be made only then if the faces context doesn't contain any error messages. So this evaluation will return error messages, and they will be shown to user via Ajax. And only then, when there's no error messages, then the transition takes place to the finish, and finish end state will redirect us to the account. So this is good. I find this to be totally fine approach. Let's save this flow and probably look how the flow graph looks now. And now you see that welcome view also has the transition to the finish end state, which looks exactly how it should look. Okay, I think, yeah, now we go to the welcome XHTML file to check what's going on here. And yeah, you see that we don't have the values binned to our model. And let's bind this to the model field. And again, we use the expression language for GSF, which looks like this. User dot and field name is user name. The same we do for our password. User dot, and this was password. And we also need to fix the produced event name, which we put it to be confirm signing. I copy this and paste here in action. Good. I think we are ready to see if this is gonna work. So let's compile the project. And finally start the application. Okay, so, and again I'm trying to access the account by entering the application root URL and got the please sign in form because the account is protected. And let's try to use the user we added in the previous video, which I think was jhat and some password. And I click sign in and see what happens. And yeah, we are lucky to see that this works correctly. And if I again try to access the account, I got it. I will get it. So, and if I go to the URL which is logout, click logout, and you see that I do not have access anymore. And let's see what will happen if we try to authenticate some unexisting user. And we got the error message, which is not such user whose name provided, and exactly the same user as we typed in. If you remember, we put the that message text in the wait a moment. Not here. Yeah, by the way, here we put that message in the faces context message from that exception, and the message text itself is here where we throw that exception, user not found exception, and here's our message, which we got here on the user interface. And if we try to authenticate the correct username but without with the invalid password, then we should get, and we get bad credentials. So everything works fine, as you see. Oh, don't click enter because it goes to the sign up form. I think you could probably fix it if you want. I'll just click in sign in button and again get the account. So okay, this works. So we have our welcome.xhtml open, so let's do some messages refactoring in here. As I promised, we'll use the inline messages for some type of messages, and the messages component for global only messages. So, and by the way, let's do the tiny improvement by adding some PrimeFaces component, which is p::focus. What this does, it basically sets the focus on the first field in our form. So you see, when we open our form, now there's no fields that hold the focus, so we need to click it manually and then type in some text. And this component do the focus on the first field on the form load up. So when we will recompile and restart the server, this will work. We open the application and get the sign in form already focused on the first field. So okay, and for messages component, we will add one single attribute, which is global only, and set it to true. What this means? This means that this messages component can display only messages which doesn't have the identifier of the messages component. For example, as we had it here, we put this identifier, messages component identifier, to null. Then this means that this message can be shown on the on this messages component. But there's messages exist that have these identifiers, and those messages can't be displayed by this messages components. And exactly what kind of messages these could be. For example, if the input text field is empty and it is required true, so it's mandatory, so these messages will not be shown here, but instead we will use the inline message component for displaying them, and we will put it next to the input text enclosing by panel group, h:panel group, to avoid the formatting issues, and we will encapsulate it together with the tooltip. And panel group component is actually the same as table in HTML markup, so that it will be converted to the table to the end user. And here finally we put the component which is message. You notice that this component, comparing to this one, is exactly for single fields which related messages will be displayed in that inline message. So this is for multiple messages, and this is only for a single message. And here we put the identifier for that component, which will be username message, and we need to point to that field which error messages this message component will display by putting the attribute for and copy this identifier username. Good. And let's do the same for the password. And the same thing pass message and for pass. Good. And now let's see what has changed. Okay, I click the application root. First of all, you see that now we have the initial focus on the first field, so that the PrimeFaces focus worked well. And inline error messages, if we click sign in and we do not have the values in the fields, then inline messages should inform the application user about that. And good, but we see some formatting issues. So the messages appeared, but it moved the entire form to the left side, which is a little bit nasty. But we can correct it by going to the style CSS and by adding the style class modification to following class identifiers, and where we modify the position to absolute and enforce it by important key and some additional positioning and box shadows to be it more cute. Let's save it, and I will make it hot install. When changing the cascade style sheet, then it usually requires to refresh the page to clear the cache and load the new CSS file. So I'll refresh it, and now I will try again to submit the empty form, and now we have the beautiful messages which doesn't impact the whole format of the form. So now it says that username value is required and the password value is required. So okay, and if we try to submit form, then we got the message here in the global messages component, and if we try to use the correct credentials, again I clicked enter, which works wrong, so enter key on your keyboard works in the way it shouldn't. Sign in. Okay, good. So far so good. I think we can close this now, and let's go to the user service simple to the create user method. And here we need to check the username availability before saving something. So we leave return true at the end of the method, and before saving we put the additional condition, where in the if statement condition we use user DAO to check username availability with the check available method, where we pass the user entity get username, and then we return false and exit the method so that it will not get to the save operation. Actually, this should work pretty opposite. One second. Check available returns true if username is available, so we need to inverse that, so that if it returns true, this means the username is available, then the condition itself is false, and we go to the saving. In the second case, if the check available returns false, we get here true and exit the method. Good. Actually, I think let's see how it will work in debug mode. Okay. Go to application, sign up. Let's try to add new user that already exists, and it was James Hetfield Ghet, and with some password. Click sign up, and here's Eclipse. Stopped at the breakpoint in the create user method. And here we, by the way, can use some cool features of Eclipse debug functionality, which is display view, this one. Here's it. I will drag it to this side. And here in this field, in this box, we can execute everything we want in application runtime. For example, we can check the user availability and query the database during the application runtime, exactly as we would do it in the application code. For example, user DAO, check available, and here user entity dot get username, and let's see what will happen if we execute this. We can execute it in the application context, so that the changes that this piece of code will make also will affect the whole application, or we can execute this just for testing purpose, just to see what it returns and how it would work if the application were running in the normal mode. So I will execute this and see what happens. And now we see the response, and it returned false. That means that user entity, which we passed here with the username ghet, isn't available. The username is already used. And if we pass this something different here as a string type, then we should see true, and yeah, again we see the boolean type returned, and it's true. The username is available. So this is a particular feature. Let's try another one. And one of our previous videos we added also a user with the following username, and it returned false. And again true. Okay, we also can go for something more interesting, like load user by username. And let's type here ghet and execute this one. And we actually see the response of user entity. Yeah, it actually returned the user entity with the reference ID, which points to the place in server memory, but we can modify it to return the actual values of that user entity, for example by doing like this. Let's see if it works. Okay, it's error. Oh, I think we need to okay, it actually returned the last name, you see, and the without the first name. So maybe we just can make this work. Okay, guys, this is not important at the moment, but now you know about this cool feature which will help you debugging application to find some bug causes. So, okay, I'll close the display and let's see what happens here. So we already checked that username is not available, so we should go inside this block. Let's step over, and yeah, we got to return false, and finally the user will not be saved. Good. And we still do not have any messages here about username availability, so we will do it right now. Okay, to send the message to Faces context from this piece of code, we need to first of all create the Faces messages instance, which is Faces message. Let's call it message. And now, actually, let's create some helper methods that will help us to construct different type of error messages, because these messages can have the different severities, and the code lines can become a little bit unreadable because of length. So okay, I will go down here and create some new methods. We do it because we will mess around a lot with the messages in this service class. So to avoid copy pasting, we'll create some method that encapsulates the Faces message creation with different severities. So okay, I will add some private methods, or actually let it be protected in case if we need to extend this class for overriding some functionality. So protected, which returns Faces message, construct error message with parameters string message itself and string detail. And inside we return new Faces message instance. With the severity error, message detail. So we have the severity error. Let's do the same for info messages. Severity info. And last one, construct the fatal message. With the severity fatal. So one good thing done. Now all we need to do is call this method the string format functionality. Here we put the message text itself. Username is not available. And here we need to pass the variable username. And we still need to provide the second parameter, which is detail, and we are not required in this case, so I put it null. So okay, we have the faces message now. And now we need to get the current faces context, which we will also do. I mean, because we will use it here a lot, we will create some method that will always return the current faces context, which will be protected faces context get faces context, and return faces context get current instance, like this one, for example. Now we can use it here to put the message inside the context. Get faces context. It's simply it is simple now. Add message. Message component identifier to null, and message itself. So good. And we also need to check, I mean, handle cases when something went wrong with the save operation. And save itself can throw many different exceptions, so we need to encapsulate this into try catch block. And catch the exceptions it could produce. Every single exception here. And in this case we also need to return false, indicating that the saving went wrong. For example, there's a case when this could happen if we wouldn't add this condition. Then if we try to save the existing user, then remember that we have a database level unique key on the username column. So there would be the SQL exception, which will be cached in this catch block. But since we have this condition, here we are trying to catch something different from the existing user or unique key SQL. Unique key violation, SQL error. So this is just in case. And we also need to put some message here. Faces message. Which in this case will be the fatal message, because it's like a database level message, error message, and here we get the message text from the exception itself. Get message, detail put to null, and finally get faces context, add message, null, message. Fine. I think we should try to run this. So go to sign up form, and let's try to add already existing user, which was jhat. And let's see if it will show the error message here about the username is not available. I hit the sign up, and success, you see the message username jhat is not available. And if we try to use another username, something different, then we should go to authentication and our account, and here we are in our account. Let's log out. Good. So this works fine now. We see the message. It's also saved the user when the username is available, and this will work in case if there's some database SQL exceptions. For example, it could be the database connectivity problem or something in that severity. So this fatal message will be produced, and it will show in application user interface as in bloody red color. So okay. Otherwise, if username is available, then we avoid jump over this piece of code, and if user is saved and there's no exception, then we finally get to the return true, which value is in fact used by Webflow decisions. So this is good.